China. Time flies away, winds blowing by, sand drifting across the plain, memories fade away. Neither the Taoist monk nor the foreign explorers could anticipate that their fates would change at the opening of the sealed cave door. Discover China, the secrets of the Sutra Cave. In 138 BC, Han Dynasty Emperor Liu Che sent an envoy named Zheng Qian on a mission across the Great Gobi Desert. He was tasked to contact the Daro Zhe tribe. Although he failed in his mission twice in 15 years, often risking life and limb, he trod a path which later became the renowned Silk Road. Merchant camel caravans majestically trot along the Silk Road. They began their journey from the then capital of China, Chang'an, and traveled all the way to the Roman Empire. A major transit depot on this route was a place called Dunhuang. They were not the only travelers on the road. Monks carrying scriptures could also be seen on their mission of spreading Buddha's teachings. These monks often made brief stops at the oasis of Dunhuang. Those who stayed sought suitable locations in the cliffs that met their Buddhist principles. 25 kilometers southeast of Dunhuang, they built grottos to continue their pursuit of enlightenment. This is an ordinary cliff facing east. It stretches for over 1,000 meters. A river, Da Chuan, runs by it, as Mount Mingsha and Mount Sanwei loom over a small, tranquil oasis. In 366 AD, a traveling monk, Yuetsun, witnessed an astonishing sight. Right before his eyes, Mount Sanwei suddenly shone with the radiance of 1,000 Buddhas that seemed to emerge from the dazzling light. Yuetsun knew this must be a message from Buddha. He quickly decided to excavate a cave on Mount Mingsha, the mountain opposite Sanwei. Yuetsun, who excavated the first cave, was later commemorated by later generations who named it Mogao Cave, which means none higher than this monk. This is how the name of the Mogao Caves came to be. This began the 1,200 years history of the Mogao Caves. This is July in Dunhuang. The summer sun is still bearing down relentlessly on the Gobi Desert. The Mogao Caves are swarming with hordes of tourists. With the help of a tour guide, visitors are shown what appears to be an ordinary cave. Yet, it is the most legendary Sutra Cave in all of Mogao. ago, it was a secluded and forbidding place. The desert sands had all but buried all of its secrets. The arrival of the 20th century did not bring any change to Taoist abbot Wang Yuanlu's plain life. It was embarrassing for him, a Taoist monk, to be tasked as a caretaker of a cave dedicated to Buddhism. But he was grateful for having a shelter in the chaos of early 20th century China. One day, however, a routine sweep of the broom led him to an unexpected discovery. From a crack on the cave wall, one could almost feel some hidden secret was lying behind it. Following the events of this historical moment, Wang Yuanlu's name has been viewed both in positive and negative light. In his letter to Empress Dowager Cixi, he reported, "The wall cracked suddenly, and I, the humble workman, dug with my hose. To my delight, a cave appeared, an inner library with thousands scrolls of sutra. No one really knew that the discovery of this Sutra Cave would alter the fate of all the Mogao caves." In the spring of 1907, a camel caravan led by British explorer Sir Mark Orell Stein was traveling in the desert along the Silk Road. This Hungarian-born Englishman was fascinated with and in search of lost civilizations. This time, the place he was going to explore was the Mogao Caves outside the city of Dunhuang. These caves were once a holy Buddhist shrine with over 1,500 years of history. On the lengthy journey to Dunhuang, Stein and his team experienced a great many difficulties and hardships. Severe cold weather and lack of water almost cost them their lives. Relying on the poorly maintained beacon towers as a guide, and perhaps with a little bit of luck, Stein finally arrived at the Mogao Caves. Unfortunately, the cave's caretaker, Wang, was away raising funds for building a Taoist temple called Sanqing Palace. Disappointed, Stein decided to seize the opportunity and explore some of the caves on his own. Many of the caves were in disrepair, but what surprised Stein was that quite a number of sculptures and murals were still completely intact and their colors remained vivid and fresh. He was standing in a Buddhist paradise. In these caves, craftsmen painted and carved Buddhas. Their purpose was to spread Buddhist teachings to the public so that the local population could understand Buddhist doctrines. In fact, the murals were illustrations of sutras. Buddhists excavated caves, painted murals, and copied sutras to disseminate Buddhist doctrines so that they could develop their puna, the merits and virtues of Buddhism. Copying the murals in the caves is an important way of studying Buddhist fine art, but for the ancient painters who created these murals, the biggest challenge was the lack of lighting in the cave. They had to hold an oil lamp with one hand and a paintbrush with the other. Their wrists had nowhere to rest. Despite poor working conditions, it did not prevent them from making exquisite and graceful paintings depicting the different sutras. But Stein was not here to appreciate these delicate murals. He seemed to be looking for something else. Becoming impatient for Wang's return, Stein traveled northwest of Dunhuang City to explore nearby sections of the Great Wall. Stein had a keen nose for finding cultural relics. This time, in the wrecked beacon towers, he found some manuscripts which looked like letters. Although Stein was proficient in a number of languages, he was totally lost trying to decipher the strange and unique characters written on them. Stein was well aware that written languages carry with it much history, and ancient antique scripts were particularly invaluable. A year later, Stein returned to the Mogao Caves with antiques and relics collected in the region. He was pleased to find that the cave's caretaker was back. Stein's first impression of Wang was that he was a lonely but proud man. He was certainly devoted to his duty. He seemed somewhat aloof. Stein wrote in his journal, "The next morning I started exploring a few major caves and taking photos of significant frescoes, trying to disguise my primary purpose for this trip." In 1851 AD, a monk called Hong Bian constructed this cave, which is now known as Cave Number 16. In this cave, he dug a small square chamber to the north of the cave corridor. It was meant for meditation. 11 years later, Hong Bian passed away. His clansmen and disciples displayed a memorial portrait of him in the cave. In 1006 AD, the portrait was removed after staying in the cave for more than a century. For unknown reasons, the cave was then filled with piles of Buddhist text before it was closed and sealed off. In the nearly 1,000 years that followed, these scriptures lay quietly in the dark cave, nearly forgotten. This was the cave that the Taoist monk Wang unexpectedly stumbled upon. Perhaps it never occurred to Stein that the trip's greatest discovery would come from this cave. The Taoist caretaker did not show it to him at the time. Stein's only option was to strike camp near the caves. What he and his companions didn't realize was that he had already possessed the key to this inner sutras library. In 627 AD, the Tang Dynasty Emperor Li Shimin ascended to the throne, and the title of his reign changed to Zhenguang. During this period, the Silk Road was blocked by Turkish forces. Before that, the road had been in use since the previous Sui dynasty between 604 and 618 AD. In the same year when Emperor Li Shimin ascended his throne, Xuanzang began his famous quest to India for the Buddhist Sutra. He had trudged over 50,000 kilometers, collecting hundreds of scrolls of Buddhist scripture. His journey was recorded in Journey to the West in the Great Tang Dynasty. Among the modeled frescoes in the Mogao Caves, depictions of this great journey can still be seen. On On this journey of exploration, Stein took this book with him. He found Chuang Tzu's bravery very admirable. One day, something suddenly struck him. It was the mural behind the Taoist priest in the photo Stein had taken. Didn't this painting depict Chuang Tzu's pilgrimage to the West? On the edge of one of the scrolls Wang had given him, Stein and his assistants found two characters representing Chuang Tzu. This was quite likely a Chinese translation manuscript of a sutra by Chuang Tzu himself. Their shared admiration for Chuang Tzu presented Stein with a way to communicate with the Taoist priest. Eventually, Wang tore down the brick wall, blocking the entrance to the Sutra Cave. The treasure shelter had been exposed. This photo shows what the Sutra Cave looked like when it was first opened. With the help of a flickering light, I stared wide-eyed into the dark secret chamber. The cave was crammed with piles upon piles of scripture scrolls in a state of disarray. This was what Stein had described in his journal after entering the Sutra Cave. In the 20 days that followed, Stein had made many discoveries in this small grotto that once belonged to monk Hong Bian. Stein wrote, "I didn't have enough time to study in detail when these documents had been written. What concerned me was how many scrolls I could take from here. It was strange that the monk didn't care about giving up such priceless treasures, but his indifference made us feel less guilty somehow. When I was picking up some silk and cloth pictures and scrolls from the messy collections for my future study, he did not raise even a single objection." It's possible that Wang didn't realize the true value of this Sutra Cave. Stein was at liberty to take over 9,000 scrolls of text and 500 Buddhist silk paintings. Nearly all of these artifacts were the most precious works of art in the Mogao Grotto. This photo shows Stein packing these artifacts before they were taken away from Dunhuang. To show his gratitude, Stein gave Wang 200 silver taels. The surprised priest did not expect to get paid. He had been struggling with raising funds for the construction of Sanqing Palace, and in the end, this Sutra Cave had helped him realize his long-cherished wish. From the time Yue-Tsuen began digging the first grotto to the Yuan dynasty, construction of the Mogao caves had never stopped. The caves on the cliffs looked like beehives, one closer to another. Workers and craftsmen from various dynasties had used their artistic talents to create brilliant works of art in those caves. If it weren't for the Taoist priest Wang or Sir Oral Stein, the Mogao grottos would have remained buried under the sands of time far longer. Ironically, as soon as these precious Buddhist texts saw the light of day, misfortune followed. On June 13, 1907, his mission crowned a complete success. Stein left the Mogao Grottos with 24 cases of Buddhist texts and paintings. Soon after he left, the first dust storm of that spring swept over the caves of 1,000 Buddhas, the Mogao Grottos. With Stein gone, the Sutra Cave of the Mogao Grottos was now half empty. The cave that had once been full of scrolls of Buddhist texts was now cut open like a bleeding wound. Upon hearing the news, archaeological explorers from different countries flocked to the Mogao Grottos. The caves were once again subjected to numerous lootings. In 1908, French sinologist and explorer Paul Pelliot gave the Taoist priest Wang 500 silver taels for 7,000 relics. A master of Chinese language, Pelliot took away the most precious manuscripts of all. 1924, an American art historian and Harvard professor, Langdon Warner, came to Dunhuang. In a more crude fashion, he simply removed 26 murals directly from the cave wall. Nowadays, in cave number 328, there is only one Bodhisattva statue, where there should be a pair opposite each other. The missing one was taken away by Warner and is in the Sackler Museum collection in the United States. Russian scholar Sergei F. Oldenburg ransacked the caves for over 10,000 pieces of literature and fallen murals. The Japanese Otani Kozui acquired more than 400 relics from the Sutra Cave through secret deals with Abbot Wang. Today, tens of thousands of relics from the Sutra Cave of Dunhuang are scattered over more than 10 countries throughout the world, while their home, the Sutra Cave, is completely bare. Both Chinese and foreign tourists share the sadness at the loss of the invaluable relics, rare texts, and precious artwork.